Hi, this is Omar at Top 5 eBikes, and this video is an update on a video I did a while back, which is which cargo bike should you buy? And as a quick summary, and we'll link it in the description, and we'll also add a link here in the video. It'll probably pop up somewhere up here. You can watch that video. I'll give you a quick summary here, which I looked at the specs of 4 different cargo bikes, and at the end of it, what I decided based on specs was that I was going to decide between the Eunorau Max Cargo and the Blix Packa. So the RadWagon, which is this bike that I have here, is one of the other bikes that was listed there. This is the Eunorau. Anyways, what I'm going to tell you now is, after riding a couple of these bikes, is which cargo bike you should buy and then which one you should not buy. Before we get into talking about cargo e-bikes, I want to mention 2 things. One is that you subscribe to Top 5 eBikes if you like this type of content. Anything e-bike related, subscribe to our channel. Thanks for all of those that have subscribed, and again, like the video if you enjoy this type of video. So like the video, subscribe to our channel. The other thing I want to mention is I want to give special thanks and a big shout out to the Easy Bike program in Santa Barbara, California. So it's this amazing program in Santa Barbara County, and they actually lent me this RadWagon for 4 days. So this program that they have in this in Santa Barbara County actually lends people, or one of the programs is that they lend people bikes for an extended period of time. It doesn't cost you anything. And it's the aim of this program is to lower emissions. And one of the ways that they do this, or that they want to do this, or trying to do this, is by getting people to ride bikes or e-bikes. And they have this amazing program where they have a ton of different bikes, including some Rad Power Bikes, Trek, electric, Propella, so a ton of different bikes. And they either lend them to you, you could do it for a long weekend, which is what I did. So special shout out to Easy Bike in Santa Barbara County. If you live in our area, you should definitely check them out. I'll link it in the description. I'll link it here on this page too, or this part of the video. So again, thank you, Easy Bike. Hopefully, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna do more videos because they do a ton of events in the community, and we think it's pretty cool what they're doing. So special thanks to Easy Bike. So for those of you that commented on YouTube, Facebook groups, Reddit, wherever I posted this video, you were right.
It should have been, I should have bought a RadWagon or a Blix Packa. That was, the bulk of the comments were about those 2 bikes. There weren't many comments about the Eunorau, there were a couple, but I think the consensus was you should get a RadWagon or a Blix Packa. And you're right. That should have been
the choice, I think, between when I went down that process. It should have been one of those 2 bikes. I think now in retrospect, after having ridden the Max Cargo for, I don't know, a couple 100 miles, and then and I haven't ridden the RadWagon for that long, but I've over 50 miles already, and I have a pretty good sense of what's, my research and then writing it, like why it's a good choice. So I think really now in retrospect, what I would say about the video that I made is that the choice is really between the RadWagon and the Blitz Packa. Now, keep in mind there have been some updates since that last video, because there's a new Blix Packa Genie, and I'll probably do another video because I would like to ride the Blix Packa Genie, but at least based on riding these 2, I can say definitively that the RadWagon is a bike that you should buy if you're looking for a cargo bike. So either the RadWagon or the Blix Packa Genie, depending on the features and what you need. This is a bike that you should not buy, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I think, based on my opinion and based on the fact that I rode this bike, what's wrong with this bike in my opinion. All right, let's get into this video. So here is one of the punchlines, which is this is one of the cargo bikes that you should buy, which is the RadWagon 4. Again, this is not a full review. I've ridden this about 50 miles, a little bit over 50 miles. And that I think gives me a pretty good idea of like some of the positives and negatives. I already knew some of them, right, because I had looked at specs. But this is almost like bringing it full circle, because I've done a ton of research. I've gotten feedback from a ton of people that have ridden it, either this one or the Packa and other bikes. And now I've ridden it myself. So now I have all this information, and now I can make a really informed decision about which cargo bike you should buy. And I think that the RadWagon 4 is definitely one. So this is a pretty solid cargo bike. People obviously have told me this before I made that video. But I think now, obviously, I have a better sense of it because I rode the bike. I would say that it feels really nimble. So that's one of the things that was great about this bike. Didn't feel at times like I was even riding a cargo e-bike. Obviously, it's a heavier e-bike, but I've ridden cargo bikes a ton, both electric e-cargo bikes and regular cargo bikes, this was a really easy bike to ride. So it was nimble, yet it was sturdy at the same time. So it felt really sturdy. I rode with my daughter for a little bit, for about 15 miles, and felt fine with her on the bike. And this bike was made for that. So it was made to carry weight, feels really sturdy. And I think one of the things to note about this bike is that this is the 4th iteration of the RadWagon. And so Rad Power Bikes has been able to iterate 4 different times and sit down and actually think about what are the changes that we can make to make this bike better. And I think they did a great job with this e-bike. Talking about sturdiness in this e-bike, the kickstand is really sturdy. And that's key, because one of my biggest issues with the Eunorau is the fact that it didn't feel sturdy. And we'll get to that later when we talk about the Eunorau. But it's sturdy. Again, it's nimble. You got speed. I didn't go up hills, so I know that that's one of the biggest gripes about this one. But you know, when I was on flat roads, it was definitely fine, whether I was carrying weight or not. Now, it's not all positive with this e-bike. I mean, there are definitely, if you were going to spend $5,000, you can find probably a better cargo bike. But in this $2,000, $2,000 plus range, this is a great e-bike. Now, the negatives are that obviously, and with most of the bikes that we review, these are direct-to-consumer brands, so there's not access to going to a shop for the most part. I mean, I know there's a couple Rad Power Bike shops, but in general, you don't have access to shops that you can go to. But they do provide quite a bit of, you know, better service, I think, than most other brands, because they have a more robust support system and team. So, but a negative nonetheless is that it's direct-to-consumer. So if there's an issue, you obviously have to hit up support, call them. And it might be difficult at times to get a hold of them. Another negative about this bike is that the front tire is a positive, because you have a lower center of gravity, so it's just easier to just kind of balance weight on this bike. So that's definitely a good thing. So that was a great thing design-wise. The problem is, and the negative is, that it can be difficult to get either the tire or tubes, because you have to order them from Rad. Now, maybe by the time you watch this video, there's some aftermarket parts, but at least for now, you have to order them from Rad. Another negative to me is that at times there have been issues with the accessories. So for example, monkey bars or the seat cushions, those accessories at times have been really difficult to get, so you haven't been able to get them. So I think that that's a big negative to note. And then the other one I would say that I listed was that it doesn't have hydraulic brakes. So not that big of an issue, and I think, but the thing is that now you have the Blix Packa, which is the same price point, and that one has hydraulic brakes. So, and this one doesn't. I think there's enough stopping power here, but still there's not hydraulic brakes on this one. I would say the other issue with this bike potentially is that for now, there's not an option for a second battery, whereas a Blix Packa, which is the other one that I think that you should consider if you're going to buy a cargo bike, there is an option to put 2 batteries on that bike. Now, there was someone that I interacted with both on Reddit and on the YouTube channel, I'll post comments here, about the range of this e-bike. And I'm sorry, about having a double battery and whether that was even necessary. You're right. I don't need 2 batteries. I've been perfectly fine. I rode this bike a couple days ago, 25 miles, and it was fine. I still had like half the battery left. I didn't use the throttle much, but I still had half the battery left. So I think you're fine with 1 battery. Now, and I've gotten comments from people on YouTube, hey, or it might have been Reddit, where, hey, I'm going to ride this 52 miles. Do you think it'll get 52 miles? 52 miles? I'm like, I don't know about 52 miles, but if you're going to go long range, then the Blix Packa is definitely nice, because you have the option of 2 batteries. So that, to me, is another potential negative. So those are, to me, the positives and negatives. I think that this is a bike that you should buy, either this or the Blix Packa. Those are, to me now, after riding this bike, at least in this $2,000 range, are the bikes that you should get. So, all right, now let's talk about the bike that I think that you should not buy, which is the Eunorau Max Cargo bike, and I'll tell you why. I rode this one for a couple hundred miles, so I think I had a pretty good sense of what the positives and negatives about this bike were, and then I ran into at least what I think is a fatal flaw of this e-bike. So let me tell you about those things, and I'll tell you why I don't think that you should buy this bike. before we get into those things, I want to mention a couple things, and this is more of a note. Not sure if everyone is aware of this. Maybe some of you are. We at Top 5 E-Bikes, and this is probably the norm for at least smaller YouTubers and e-bike reviewers, we source bikes usually one of 4 ways. We either buy the bikes ourselves with no discount, and we've done that with many bikes where we just buy it. There's no discount. We're not working with the brand. They don't send us a bike. We just buy it ourselves. We either buy it ourselves at retail, the same price you pay. Or the second option is that we get it from the brand at a discount. So we'll get discounts of 10 to 20, 30, 40% for some of these bikes. The other way we get them is that they'll ship us a bike and we get to keep it. So we've had some bikes like that as well. And we'll note it. We'll usually mention, well, not usually, we'll mention it in the video to say, hey, the X brand sent us this bike, so FYI. And then the last way is that they'll send us a bike, we get to do a video, and then we got to ship it out. So we've gotten bikes that way too. It doesn't matter which of the 4 ways that we get the bike. We're free to say whatever we'd like. And so it's, again, this is why we're doing this type of video, whether it's good or bad, and our thoughts and our experiences. The Eunorau falls into the second category, the type of, or how we acquired a bike, where we got a discount from Eunorau. So Eunorau gave us a discount. We bought this bike. We paid for this bike. Anyways, these are our thoughts after going through and using this bike. Let me start off by some of the positives, or giving you some of the positives of this bike, because there are some positives of this bike. Again, I had made notes as I was riding it of what I liked, what I didn't like. I think what I really liked about this bike is that the motor, you can feel that it's powerful. It's a 750 watt motor. I obviously, when you go back to that comparison video, I loved the price of this bike. So that was one of the things that kind of enticed me. Aside from the fact that Eunorau's been around for a while, they make, they make a variety of bikes. I think now in retrospect, their specialty is more of like a mountain bike and these like big motor bikes. They have some mid-drive bikes, conversion kits too, so that sort of thing. But they have 2 cargo bikes. And again, positives, the motor is 750 watts. You can definitely feel it. So it's got power to it. It's a comfortable e-bike to ride. So comfortable cargo bike in general to ride. So I definitely didn't feel as comfortable as with, say, I felt with the RadWagon or the Yuba that I used to have, the Yuba Mundo. But early on, I did mention to my wife that I didn't trust the kickstand. Now, talking about the kickstand, other influencers like Micah Toll and also Citizen Cycle, they've reviewed the mid-drive version of this bike. It's the same frame, which is the Eunorau mid-drive bike. That mid-drive, they've talked about how the kickstand is too low and it'll scrape. So they both mentioned that. I actually mentioned to my wife early on that I was like, hey, I don't know if I trust the kickstand. It doesn't seem sturdy. And I reached out to Eunorau to let them know, hey, I don't think this kickstand is sturdy. They did mention that they were working on updates on the 2nd generation. I was like, okay, that's fine. Now, but yeah, so to me, it was just one of those things where I didn't like it. I didn't like the kickstand early on. Now, there were other negatives, I thought. What they call like this similar thing to the monkey bars, like these other bikes, there were some design flaws with it because it was too low. So a kid, you can't really tell here, but if a kid was sitting here on the seat, and you could kind of see here, it was too low for a child to hold, and it's also not wide enough. So if an adult was sitting here, they'd have a tough time kind of sitting here. So I thought there was an issue with the monkey bars. The other issue with these monkey bars is that the Yep Maxi, which is the most popular seat, and you see it here on this bike, on the RadWagon, it barely fit in here. I had to squeeze it in. So I provided this feedback to Eunorau to say, hey, Yep Maxi, which is the most popular seat out there, barely fits in these bars. So you guys need to probably make them wider and higher, is the other thing I mentioned to him. Now, the last negative I would say about this bike before we get into the fatal flaw was that the other negative to me, and one of the issues with this bike, and more again, another design flaw, was that these wooden stands for someone that was sitting in the back and you have your feet down. When I would pedal, I would hit the back of my foot. Sometimes would hit them. So I thought that obviously it wasn't like a huge deal. These issues that I mentioned, for the most part, they were more of like, well, it's lower end. It's a cheaper bike. They're obviously in their first design of their cargo bike, and I was like, they're gonna redesign it. They'll probably make upgrades, that sort of thing. So it was more of like, this is not the e-bike for me because I can't fit two. Oh, and so that brings up another point, that you can't fit two child seats in this bike, and that to me was that was a deal breaker for me early on, where I was like, if I can't fit two kids on this, and this isn't the e-bike for me. And I didn't realize that when I was looking at the specs of the bikes, because they have an image where you could see two child seats, but those child seats are not the Yet Maxi, and I trust the Yet Maxi. So that was the other thing, that you can't fit two of them. You can fit two in the Blix Packa and the RadWagon. For me, that was the deal breaker. And then I ran into the fatal flaw. And to me, the fatal flaw, and I'll put some pictures here, the kickstand broke. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal to me. That shows that the weld job was not good. And I say this because I have a friend who's a welder. He was a professional welder. He was like, yeah, that's a really bad weld job. So the kickstand and the piece that was welded to the frame where the kickstand is attached actually broke off. I was actually out with my daughter when it happened. I heard a crack when I used the kickstand, and then it broke off. So thankfully I was holding my daughter, and I wasn't trusting that my daughter was going to be held up by this kickstand, which, disclaimer, you should never, or note I should say, you should never leave your kid on any bike with a kickstand for too long, or you should always be looking after him. But this is, again, I had mentioned to my wife early on that I was like, I don't trust this kickstand. So it broke off. So the kickstand breaks off. I'm like, I don't trust this bike. I reached out to Eunorau. To their credit, they sent me a piece to say, hey, don't worry about it. We're working for the next version of this. Like, we're gonna make sure that it's a sturdier kickstand. We'll take that feedback. We're gonna send you a piece so you can add the kickstand to the frame. So in essence, it was two pieces of metal, and we'll add some pictures to see if you can see it there. But it was two pieces of metal on the frame, and then I could attach the kickstand. Well, I used that. I attached it, and now the kickstand's actually worse, I think. So to me, that was not a fix. It was, again, something that I haven't ridden the bike actually since the kickstand broke, which was a few months ago because I was traveling out of the country. But I reached out to Eunorau to let them know, like, hey, this fix that you sent me, it's not going to work. Like, you have to send me a new bike. Their response was, we're not sending you a new bike, which I guess I'm not surprised. But Eunorau pretty much said, we're not going to ship you a new bike. We shipped you a replacement for the kickstand. I wasn't happy, obviously, because now I have this bike here. I'm stuck with this bike that doesn't have a kickstand, which is a major part of a cargo bike. I'm lucky that I do have a couple friends that might be interested in taking this off my hands because we paid for it. But again, that's the reason why I cannot recommend this bike, because there was a flaw with the structure of the bike and where the kickstand was. And it just makes me wonder also about some of the other weld jobs on this bike. And it also makes me wonder, this bike was probably designed more, it was a design of a regular bike and it was just extended, whereas a bike like the RadWagon or the Blix Packa or a Yuba Combi, those are actual cargo bikes. And I think there's engineers thinking about weight and how it's distributed and all the different parts. Now, again, there's failures with all these bikes, but this just seemed like after a couple hundred miles, it broke down. And then the other piece of it was Eunorau not really responding. So I understand that there's issues with bikes, and obviously a lot of people that watch these have watched the videos, have commented about their issues with different brands. And after about 15 bikes that we've unboxed, this is the first time we've had like a major issue with the bike. We've had small issues, but not anything big. This is the first one, so 1 out of 15. But this is a big issue. So now we're stuck with this bike, which is a pretty expensive bike, and we got to figure out what to do with it. So again, if you have this bike and you had a good experience with it, that's great. We didn't. The other piece of it is that Eunorau didn't really provide much to try to fix the issue or alleviate it, other than sending us apart. So that's why I think, and I'm not trying to say that Eunorau is a bad brand. It's just that we had a bad experience. I don't think we're going to buy or try to get any Eunorau e-bikes in the future. And so again, we can't recommend the Eunorau brand. I'm going to add a comment to the cargo bike a comparison video, spec video, and a bold note to say, watch this video as to why you shouldn't buy the Eunorau bike. All right, so now we talked about the one that I think that you should buy or you should consider. the one that you shouldn't, which is the Eunorau Max Cargo. I will say that I haven't had an opportunity to ride the Blix Packa. I would love to ride that bike, but without riding that bike, again, it's just more of like this one. I know that this is a solid bike, so I would say get the RadWagon. I would love to ride the Blitz Packa, and I could see scenarios where the Blitz Packa makes sense. Like if you needed 2 batteries, get the Blix Packa. If you needed, if you think that you need hydraulic brakes, which I'm not going to sit here and say that no, you don't need them. You're carrying a lot of weight on these bikes, so potentially you might need it. So if you think you need hydraulic brakes, then you should go with the Blix Packa over the RadWagon. But in general, it should be between this bike and the Blix Packa. And then depending on your needs, you might go with one or the other. But if you got the RadWagon, I think you're going to be 100% happy. You're going to get a ton of value for the bike. So yeah, hopefully I think I'm going to decide here shortly which cargo bike I'm going to buy. Because obviously this didn't work out. So I'm probably going to buy the RadWagon or the Blix Packa. So we'll see which one I end up picking up. But if I end up going with the RadWagon, I think I'm going to be 100% happy. So thanks for watching. Let us know if you have any questions. I know you might have comments about some of the stuff I said. And be on the lookout for our next video. If you enjoyed this review, please subscribe to our channel and leave us a comment. Visit us at top5ebikes.com or some of our social media accounts. Thank you.